I tried to tell her no, but I just didn't want her thinking anything was wrong.
Why would she think that? Did you say something to her?
No, but she's not stupid. She's noticed I'm avoiding her.
And you told her that's my fault.
No, I never say anything to anyone about you, but it doesn't look good when you track me down like that.
Track you down? Wow.
No, I know you were probably just worried.
You weren't answering your phone now.
And that's because you cared.
I'm sorry if that's such a problem.
No, it's not, but it's just sometimes I need a bit of space.
You know, every time you speak to one of your family, it's like you're a different person. You start questioning everything about our relationship.
That's not what I'm doing.
You just said you needed space away from me.
Well, I didn't mean it like that.
You want space, Libby? You can have it.
What are you doing?
Have all the space you want.
Jared?
In fact, you don't have to put up with me at all if I'm such a bitch.
Jared! Jared! Are you okay? What are you playing at? Didn't you hear me beat? He's deaf!
I'm so sorry, I didn't...
Call an ambulance!
No, it's fine. No need for an ambulance.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Oh my God.
You wanted me dead? Is that it?
No, that's the last thing I want.
Thing is, I don't know how I'd carry on if I lost you.
Don't say that.
That's how much I love you. So I don't care what your family keeps saying to you. I'm not letting them take you away from me.
I'm all right.
You don't look it. Has he said something to you?
I can't do this again.
Has he done something to you?
Keep it down. He's outside.
I don't care. I'll go and tell him.
No, you'll make it worse.
This is not normal, Libby. He won't let you speak to anyone. He follows you around and he's clearly tracking your phone.
Everyone uses apps to find each other.
Why do you keep making excuses for him?
He's going through a bad patch. It's only because he loves me so much.
It's not right. Maybe you should tell him to see a doctor.
I can't do that. And I can't talk about this anymore.
Take it, please. If he's tracking your phone, who knows what other devices or apps he's using on you? Plus, you never get your messages.
What are you gonna use?
I'll just say I lost it and use Dad's phone for now.
I don't know.
Please. Just so I can keep in touch and know you're okay. I'm really worried he's not stable, Libby.
I can totally see us going to the uni in a day. Coming back to our little nest at night.
Yeah, me too.
Why are you so quiet?
Just what happened. What could have happened. I can't stop thinking about you in that road.
Look, it's fine. Just make sure you don't push us like that again. What's going on?
Coral's had the baby.
Where'd you get that from? You got a secret phone?
No, it's Kat's. She just gave it me to look after.
Why would she do that?
The phone you got me, it doesn't work. The messages don't always come through.
So it's not good enough for you, is it?
Maybe I should go and see Coral and the baby.
You know, nothing's ever good enough for Princess Libby.
I'm not trying to upset you, Jared, but this is my baby brother.
I almost got hit by a car today because of you. You're still lying to my face.
No, I didn't mean to.
Give it to me.
No!
What else are you hiding from me?
I'm sorry. I will never lie to you again.
Sorry, I'm the only one who truly cares for you. You know that, right?
Right. It's just me and you. I'm not going anywhere.
I love you.
I love you too. Do you want a drink?
Yeah. Go on then. Hey, can I get some Chris as well?
Just getting them.
Libby? Libby? Mitch? Libby! Libby! Get back here now!
Is that Libby?
Libby? Libby? Libby? Did he do this to you?
I just want to come home.
Oh, come on, love, come on. Come here. It's all right. You're safe now, love. Hey.